Here's a creature that has no brain, no heart, no blood, no bones. And yet, it's one of the most successful animals that has ever lived on this planet. It predates the dinosaurs by hundreds of millions of years. It survived every single mass extinction event Earth has ever thrown at life. It reproduces in ways that would make a biologist's head spin. And right now, as you watch this video, there are jellyfish in the ocean that are technically immortal. I know, that sounds completely insane, but stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to look at these translucent blobs floating in the sea and realize they are, without question, one of the most bizarre and fascinating things evolution has ever produced. So what exactly is a jellyfish? What is going on inside that gelatinous body? And why does none of it, absolutely none of it, follow the rules? Let's get into it. Part 02. No brain, no problem. Let's start with the most mind-bending fact about jellyfish anatomy. They have no centralized brain whatsoever. Zero. Not a small one, not a primitive one. Nothing. And yet, they hunt. They navigate. They detect light and gravity. They even sleep. Yes, sleep. As researchers discovered in 2023, how is that even possible? What jellyfish have instead is something called a nerve net. Imagine your entire nervous system spread out like a thin mesh across your body, with no central processing unit, no headquarters, no command center. Every part of the jellyfish processes information locally, right where it receives it. It's the biological equivalent of a decentralized computer network. And honestly, it works shockingly well. Some species of jellyfish, like the box jellyfish, take this even further. Box jellyfish have 24 eyes arranged in 4 clusters called rhopalia. 24 eyes. They can see color, detect motion, and some of them can even form proper images, all without a brain to process what they're seeing. The eyes send signals directly to the muscle tissue that controls movement. The jellyfish doesn't think, it just responds. And it does it fast enough to hunt fish, shrimp, and other fast-moving prey with terrifying efficiency. But if they have no brain, what are they? Are they even animals? Absolutely. Jellyfish are animals. They belong to the phylum Cnidaria, but they represent one of the earliest branches of animal life, a lineage so old that it evolved before brains were even a concept, before vertebrates, before insects, before anything you could comfortably draw in a cartoon. They are, in the most literal sense, a living experiment from the dawn of complex life. Part 03. A body made of almost nothing now. Let's talk about that body, because it is genuinely one of the strangest structures in the animal kingdom. A jellyfish is approximately 95% water. That's not a metaphor. That's the actual composition. The rest is a gelatinous substance called mesoglia, kind of biological jelly that sits sandwiched between 2 extremely thin layers of cells. One layer faces outward, one faces inward. That's it. That is the entire body plan. No skeleton, no muscles in the traditional sense, no organs as we understand them. The jellyfish's digestive system is a single cavity. It eats and expels waste through the same opening. That's the mouth and the stomach, and the intestines all rolled into one rudimentary hole. Scientists sometimes call it a gastrovascular cavity, which is a very fancy name for what is essentially a tiny living bag. And yet, this impossibly simple body is extraordinarily functional. The mesoglia acts like a spring. When a jellyfish contracts its bell, that circular dome-shaped part, it pushes water out and propels itself forward through jet propulsion. When it releases, the elastic mesoglia snaps back, drawing water back in. It's one of the most energy-efficient forms of locomotion ever measured in any animal. Studies have found that jellyfish use less energy per unit of distance traveled than virtually any other swimming creature on Earth. They're so efficient that researchers are literally studying them to design better underwater robots. How can something with no brain, no bones, and no real organs be more physically efficient than a fish that's had hundreds of millions of years of evolution to refine its swimming? That's exactly the kind of question that keeps marine biologists up at night. Part 04. The sting that defies physics. All right, let's talk about the most famous thing jellyfish are known for, the sting. And what's happening at a microscopic level when a jellyfish stings you is one of the fastest, most mechanically complex events in all of biology. Inside every tentacle, jellyfish have specialized cells called cnidocytes, sometimes called nematocysts. Each of these cells contains a tiny coiled harpoon, preloaded under extreme osmotic pressure. And when a trigger is activated, either by touch or by chemical signals, that harpoon fires. How fast? Approximately 700 meters per second, squared of acceleration. That is faster than a bullet leaving a gun barrel when you account for the scale. The entire mechanism goes from rest to fully deployed in about 700 nanoseconds. The force generated during this firing is so intense that the jellyfish's stinging cells are considered to produce one of the fastest biological movements ever recorded. And here's what makes it even more extraordinary. The jellyfish doesn't control each individual nematocyst. Each one fires independently, purely based on its own mechanical triggers. It's not a weapon the jellyfish aims. It's a weapon that exists on every surface of its tentacles, always armed, always waiting. Some jellyfish, like the box jellyfish Chironex fleckeri, carry enough venom in their tentacles to kill an adult human in minutes. It is considered the most venomous marine animal in the world. The venom attacks the cardiovascular system so rapidly that death can occur before a victim even reaches the shore. And the box jellyfish, remember, the one with 24 eyes and no brain, is actively capable of pursuing prey. It doesn't just drift and sting accidentally. It hunts. What do you even call a brainless, eyeball-covered, harpoon-covered bag of water that can outswim you and potentially kill you? I call it a miracle of evolution, or a nightmare, depending on your perspective. Part 05. They can become immortal. Okay, this is the part of the video I've been building toward, because this is the fact about jellyfish that once you fully understand it, changes how you think about life and death entirely. There is a species of jellyfish, Turritopsis dohrnii, that is biologically capable of reverting back to its juvenile state after reaching full maturity, indefinitely, over and over again. Here's how their life cycle normally works for context. A jellyfish begins life as a microscopic larva called a planula. The planula settles on the seafloor and develops into a polyp, a tiny stationary tube-like structure. The polyp then produces tiny jellyfish called ephirae, which grow into the adult medusa stage, the classic bell-shaped creature we all recognize. Then it reproduces and dies. That's the normal path. But Turritopsis dohrnii, when it is stressed, when it's injured, starving, or sick, instead of dying, it reverses the process entirely. Its cells undergo a process called transdifferentiation, in which mature, specialized cells literally transform back into undifferentiated stem cells. The adult medusa sinks to the seafloor, reabsorbs its own body, and reverts to a polyp. Then the whole cycle begins again. There is no known biological limit to how many times this can happen. In theory, the process could repeat forever. Scientists who study this process are not using the word immortal casually. Transdifferentiation, the abilities for one type of cell to fully transform into a completely different type of cell, is extraordinarily rare in the animal kingdom. Humans can't do it. We die when our cells stop dividing properly. But this jellyfish essentially presses the reset button on its own biology, becoming young again every time death approaches. Could studying Turritopsis dohrnii unlock something about human aging, about cancer, about cellular degeneration? Researchers think possibly yes, which is exactly why this tiny, barely visible jellyfish has become one of the most scientifically significant animals in the world. Right now, laboratories in Italy, Japan, and the US are dedicating serious resources to sequencing its genome and understanding exactly which molecular switches control the reversal. This microscopic jellyfish might hold the keys to regenerative medicine in ways we're only beginning to understand. Part 6. Ancient Beyond Comprehension. Let's zoom out, way out, and put jellyfish in historical context. Jellyfish have been on Earth for at least 500 million years. Some fossil evidence pushes that estimate as far back as 700 million years. To put that in perspective, jellyfish were alive before there were trees, before there were fish, before there was complex plant life on land at all. They existed for hundreds of millions of years before the first dinosaur ever set foot on the ground. And here's what's remarkable. During all that time, through 5 mass extinction events that wiped out over 90% of all species on Earth at various points, jellyfish survived every single time. The extinction that killed the dinosaurs 66 million years ago, jellyfish came out the other side. The Permian extinction event 252 million years ago, which killed 96% of all marine species, jellyfish made it through. They are the ultimate survivors, and their simplicity is precisely why, when catastrophe strikes, complexity becomes a liability. Creatures with complex organ systems, specific dietary requirements, and narrow environmental tolerances collapse quickly. But a jellyfish needs very little. It can eat almost anything it can physically overwhelm. It tolerates wide ranges of temperature and salinity. It reproduces rapidly and prolifically. Its body is so simple that there's almost nothing to go wrong. It is the biological equivalent of a system so stripped down and efficient that even apocalyptic conditions can't break it. We spend a lot of time celebrating the complexity of life, the intelligence of dolphins, the architecture of the human brain, the social structures of primates. But should we also be celebrating simplicity? Because if the goal of evolution is survival, then jellyfish are winning in a way nothing else comes close to. Part 7. Taking over our oceans. Here's where this story takes a turn from fascinating to urgent. Jellyfish populations around the world are exploding, and scientists are genuinely alarmed. In some regions, jellyfish blooms have grown so massive they've clogged the water intake systems of power plants and desalination facilities. In 2013, a Swedish nuclear reactor was shut down because jellyfish blocked its cooling water filters. Similar incidents have happened in Japan, Scotland, Israel, and the Philippines. But it's not just infrastructure. Jellyfish blooms are devastating fishing industries. In the Sea of Japan, blooms of Nomura's jellyfish, the largest jellyfish species in the world, growing up to 2 meters wide and 200 kilograms in weight, have torn through fishing nets, contaminated catches with their venom, and driven away the fish that local fisheries depend on. The economic cost runs into hundreds of millions of dollars per year in affected regions. Why is this happening? The answer is a brutal list of human-caused factors. Warmer ocean temperatures favor jellyfish, which tolerate heat better than many of their predators and competitors. Ocean acidification caused by increased CO2 absorption harms coral, fish, and shellfish, but barely affects jellyfish. Overfishing has removed many of the species that eat jellyfish or compete with them for food. Nutrient pollution from agricultural runoff creates dead zones, low oxygen areas, where jellyfish thrive and most other animals cannot survive. In other words, we've accidentally created near-perfect conditions for jellyfish to dominate. Every major way in which we've degraded ocean ecosystems has turned out to benefit jellyfish specifically. Some marine biologists now speak seriously about a jellyfish ocean, a future state where declining fish populations and rising jellyfish populations swap roles, fundamentally restructuring the world's marine food webs in ways that may be very difficult to reverse. Are we entering an age of jellyfish? An age that, ironically, wouldn't be too different from what Earth looked like 500 million years ago, before complex and vertebrate life even began? That's an uncomfortable question with no comfortable answer. Part 8. What they're teaching us. Despite all of this, or maybe because of all of this, jellyfish are becoming one of the most intensely studied organisms in modern science, and the things we're learning from them are genuinely rewriting what we thought we knew about biology, medicine, and even robotics. Let's start with bioluminescence. Many jellyfish species produce their own light through chemical reactions in their bodies. In 1962, scientist Osamu Shimomura isolated a protein from the crystal jellyfish Equirria victoria, a glowing protein called green fluorescent protein, or GFP. That discovery didn't win a Nobel Prize until 2008, but in the intervening decades, GFP became one of the most important tools in all of biomedical research. Scientists attach it to specific proteins or cells inside living organisms so they can watch those cells in real time under a microscope glowing green against the dark. It has been used to track cancer cell growth, observe how HIV spreads through tissue, watch neurons fire in the brain. Thousands of research papers published every year still depend on a glowing protein from a jellyfish discovered over 60 years ago. That is an extraordinary legacy for something that floats around without a brain-eating plankton. Then there's the robotics angle. Engineers at the California Institute of Technology and Harvard have independently developed soft robots modeled on jellyfish locomotion, using pulsing, elastic bodies to move through water with minimal energy expenditure. The goal is to build underwater drones that can monitor ocean environments, track pollution, or conduct research in deep-sea conditions where rigid metal robots struggle. The design template is 500 million years old, tested in every ocean environment on Earth, and it still outperforms anything we can engineer from scratch. And there's the medicine question. Again, Turritopsis dohrnii's transdifferentiation ability has researchers asking questions that weren't even on the scientific radar 20 years ago. Can we induce similar cellular reversal in human tissue to regenerate damaged organs? Can we use the molecular pathways that control jellyfish age reversal to slow or reverse age-related disease in humans? We don't have answers yet, but the fact that we're asking these questions at all and that they're grounded in legitimate biology is extraordinary. And it all comes back to a tiny, nearly invisible jellyfish that most people have never heard of. So here's what I want to leave you with. Jellyfish look like nothing. They are, on the surface, the most underwhelming creatures in the sea, translucent, silent, drifting along without apparent purpose. But beneath that surface, or rather within that surface, because jellyfish are basically all surface, lies one of the most successful biological blueprints in the history of life on Earth. No brain, and yet they sense the world, hunt, react, and even sleep. No bones, and yet they move more efficiently than almost any other swimmer. No complex organs, and yet they survive every catastrophe the planet can produce, and one species among them, quietly, without fanfare, in the dark water, has figured out how to cheat death entirely. We tend to measure intelligence and worth in the animal kingdom by how much something resembles us, the social complexity of chimpanzees, the emotional depth of elephants, the problem-solving of crows. But jellyfish measure worth differently. In 500 million years of unbroken survival, while everything more complex around them collapsed and died. By that measure, they are the most successful animals that have ever existed. What does it mean that the simplest plan, no brain, no blood, no bones, just a pulsing bag of seawater with a net of nerves, has outlasted and outendured everything else? What does it say about complexity, about intelligence, about what it actually takes to survive? I don't have a clean answer for you. And honestly, I don't think jellyfish care. They were here before the question existed, and if our current trajectory continues, they may be here long after anyone is left to ask it. Tell me what video you want me to make next. See you in the next one.